Da, 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 da. Dun, da-dun, da-dun, da-da-dun. Zoom. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our review of episode 8 of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Under Cloak of War. I am joined as always.
It's not called Under the Pale Moonlight.
No, it's Under the Cloak of War. And I am joined as always by my best buddy in the whole wide world, Jason Harding, who I just know loved this episode. So it's a war episode.
War.
Big,
you know, that Klingon
letters.
war thingy that Michael Burnham started.
Yeah, you just can't let that go. So
somehow she's still serving in Starfleet, though.
Well, but you know, in the way far future now. So the plot of this episode is fairly simple, actually.
Yeah, it is.
There are two parallel stories. One takes place in the present, where there is a Klingon ambassador who is being transported aboard the Enterprise.
Yep.
And he's a Klingon, but he's a Federation ambassador.
He's
works
a Klingon for the Federation.
Who works for the Federation, and he was a general, you know, for the Klingons, obviously, in the Klingon War, but he defected, right? But he was apparently a very brutal general. So the Starfleet officers on the Enterprise, who were veterans of the war, still have some pretty hard feelings toward him as a result of that, especially Dr. Benga and Nurse Chapel and Ortegas, who are the three sort of characters that we care about that were in the war. And
or at least two of them.
3 of them for me. So while that's going on in the present day, we also get flashbacks to during the war, where Benga and Chapel both served in the same, basically, on Jagal, and they were in what's basically a MASH unit and dealing with the wounded that were coming in from the battle.
Ron Howard's kid brother,
with Clint Howard playing another. I love Clint Howard's arc in Star Trek because he played one memorable character as a kid in the original series, and since then he has just randomly popped up playing just nothing characters.
He's been an Orion. He was an Orion in Enterprise.
Yeah.
What else was he in Voyager?
He was. Remember, he was in Deep Space Nine, and in the episode where they go back in time to San Francisco. He was a
Ferengi. He also played a Ferengi. Played a Ferengi. No, he played a Ferengi on Voyager. Or was it or was it? Did he play a Ferengi on? I don't remember.
No,
it might have been Enterprise. It was Enterprise.
Okay, because he was on Discovery too. He played just like a random guy that they ran into, and it was just like, oh hey, look, it's Clint Howard, everybody. And that's kind of what he is in. Yeah, go ahead.
Was he an Orion in Discovery? And
I can't remember.
He was like one of the first Ferengi that they ever encounter on Enterprise.
Okay.
Who cares? He's been on the show.
But anyway, so in this one, he's like the guy in charge of the medical camp that they're working at during the war. So the present day stuff is there's a lot of tension on the ship because this Klingon guy is there. But, you know, Pike has orders to transport him to this place he needs to go to, and they want to keep things running smoothly because the whole idea is, well, you know, everybody deserves a second chance. And if our Federation values mean anything to us, we need to let this guy, you know, who apparently has done good work.
He's done a lot of good work, apparently.
Yeah. And it's like, we need to give him the chance to reform and redeem himself. And if that's what he wants to do, and he's really turned over a new leaf, then we should, you know, respect that and treat him accordingly. But there are, you know, the people like Benga and Chapel and Ortegas, and mostly Benga. He's the one who gets the most focus.
And Chapel.
Chapel too, but I mean, it's mostly Benga's thing. You know, they have emotional scars that they just can't shrug off,
because as I said while we were watching it, apparently psychiatric treatment for PTSD is not a thing that they have.
There is no such thing as effective psychiatric treatment in Star Trek.
Everyone seems to carry war trauma, which makes me start to question Starfleet's ability to care for people who joined Starfleet to explore, but wound up watching all their friends die on a mud hole on another planet. Right, yep. Miles O'Brien?
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
Keep going.
So anyway,
keep going.
So we, as that's going on in the present, we keep cutting back to wartime, where we see, the horrors of war as seen through Mbenga's eyes and Nurse Chapel's eyes. They have to patch up these young soldiers, including there's this one guy who his
guts are all over the place.
His guts are all over. Well, yeah, there's two of them. There's one guy whose guts are all over the place, who they store in a transporter buffer because they don't have time to treat him now, and if they don't, then they'll just have to let him die. And then eventually there's like an emergency where they have to beam a whole bunch of people in at once, and they have to clear the transporter buffer, and they end up, and Benga ends up basically killing the guy by erasing his pattern because he had no choice. It was like, we have all these new people coming in and we just can't spare the space in the transporter buffer. And then there's the guy whose heart they have to massage by hand to bring him back. And then when he gets better, he goes back to the battle. And of course, if you've ever seen a war episode of anything, that dude's not coming back alive. And we get the inevitable scene of, we see him in the morgue. He doesn't make it. And eventually Mbenga, because of course we know now that Mbenga is also an unstoppable fighting machine.
That's right. He's got a reputation. They call him a ghost because before he became a doctor, he was apparently the guy that you drop in to murder. And he had 31 unarmed confirmed kills.
Hand-to-hand kills. Yeah.
Hand-to-hand kills.
So he's like an unstoppable fighting machine.
He's the Rambo of the future.
So exactly. So eventually the Klingons start massacring civilians, and Mbenga is asked to join a team to go stop this. And eventually, at first he says, no, I don't do that anymore. I'm a doctor now. But eventually, after things get really bad, and like they are literally beaming children away from this place, and because children are being massacred now, eventually Mbenga says, okay, I'll go. So I
have a question.
Yes.
Why wasn't Starfleet beaming all of those civilians out of that war zone in the first place?
You mean like right away?
You mean get the people out of the fucking war zone before the Klingons go, fuck it, let's kill everybody.
Fuck it, because eventually they're going to do that.
Yeah, or maybe they could get hit by stray fire on either side, friendly fire, who knows? Just curious why they were still.
I never thought.
We see this city being destroyed in the background.
Oh my God! There's
almost the entire episode
flying back and forth the entire time. Yeah.
But now they're getting the kids out.
They're busy. There's a lot of they're awfully busy. But anyway, so here's the big like reveal at the end of the episode.
Yes.
Ra, whose full name is Dagra, who was General Dagra in the war.
Yep.
The Klingon guy. One of the reasons he defected was because his own people turned against him, because he was called the Butcher of Jagal by Klingons, because his story since the war has been that he was against the massacres of the civilians, and in order to stop the massacres of civilians, he actually turned against his own soldiers and was killing his own soldiers to stop them from massacring the civilians. And because of that, he was called the Butcher of Jagal, and he eventually defected to the Federation.
Yep.
But in reality, it was not Ra who was killing those Klingon soldiers. It was Mbenga who was there to try and get to him, because actually he wasn't opposed to killing the civilians. Ra was the general who gave the order for them to do it. And he was the guy that Mbenga had gone there to kill to stop the massacres of civilians. So actually it's Benga who is the butcher of Jagal, not Dagra. And eventually they have a confrontation, and so there's tension between Benga and Ra throughout the episode. They have like a little sparring match, like a judo match.
There's a dinner. Some people get upset. Everyone leaves.
Ortegas gets upset and leaves, and then Chapel's like, "Hey, that's my ticket out of here," and she's like, "I'm gonna go check on her."
Because Ortega says there's no way he's had a change of heart. He's probably just a spy for the Klingons.
Right. That's Ortega's thing for the whole episode. Like, he hasn't really changed. So, and then eventually Benga, at Pike's suggestion, because Pike can tell that Benga is really tense about this too. Pike says, maybe you should go check on Ortega's too.
Leave.
So he leaves, but before he leaves, Ra grabs his arm and he's like, hey, we should fight each other, but just for fun. And Benga's like, okay. So then they have a scene a little bit later where they have like a judo sparring match, and they're kind of feeling each other out. And Ra is like, we should do something together. That would be great, because I'm like on the Federation side now, and I was a general for the Klingons, and you were a veteran of the war, and we were on opposite sides, but now we're on the same side, and we should like be buddies and allies, and it'll show how we're in a time of peace now. It'll be great. And then Benga's like, maybe not. I don't know about that. And then eventually they decide, because number one can tell that like this whole ship is like a powder keg ready to explode, because there's a lot of people that are not happy about this Klingon guy being on the ship. So eventually they decide to alter course to cut through a nebula so that they can get him off. They can get where they're going faster and get him off the ship sooner. And when he finds that out, he goes to visit Benga in sickbay. And Benga has been, living through his war trauma the whole episode. And when he sees Ra walk in at the end, he's like, you know what? No, we're not doing this. I don't want to talk right now. And Ra like doesn't leave. I mean, he's not like, he's a little dickish about it, because like it's obvious the traumatized war veteran would like to be left alone. But Ra's like, no, man, let's talk about it. Come on, let's not give in to hatred, and let's work through this. And then Benga's like, I told you to leave though. So then we cut to a different shot where it's on the other side of like a glazed glass, so you can't really see what's going on the other side of it. But they struggle with each other, and it ends up that Ra gets stabbed in the chest with the same Klingon dagger that Benga used way back in the day during the war to do a bunch of his killing. And now Ra's taken it in the chest and he's dead. And Nurse Chapel witnessed the whole thing. And she tells Captain Pike that it was Ra who started the fight, not Benga.
That's right. And he's all full of shit. And
so everything.
More lying to Captain Pike.
Well, Pike kind of, there's a Pike and Benga scene right at the end where you can tell that Pike kind of wonders, if that's really true, if Ra started the fight or if Benga started the fight. And he asks Benga, and he says, look, if something else happened, if you started the fight, like, you can tell me, and we'll work something out, like, I'll understand. And then Benga just says, I didn't start the fight, but I'm glad he's dead. And Pike's like, okay, all right, well, hope you're okay, bye. And he leaves, and that's pretty much the end of the episode.
And great.
And I know you loved it.
I have a lot of problems.
I know you do.
Hey, Steve.
Do you want to go first? Or? Yes,
hey,
please.
Steve. Can I ask you a question?
I would love for you to ask me a question.
Why the fuck should we forgive Benga? He was a murderer before he became a doctor. Shouldn't justifiably someone. He was a fucking murderer. 31 confirmed unarmed kills. He was a fucking. Who cares?
In war.
So here's the bad question. Are you ready? No one can be reformed, right? No one can be reformed. No matter what you do, you can't be reformed.
Well,
what Benga did at the end of this episode is inherently wrong. There's no way to justify it. Now, the reason I brought up Pale Moonlight is because technically what Sisko did was inherently wrong, what he did in that episode. But he was doing it for the greater good, to save more lives, to hopefully win a war that was going to decimate the Federation. Right?
And what Benga does doesn't save lives, because
and what Benga does is not what other people have done for him. Someone comes back and says, Benga, come on, come back. Be a murderer for us again. And he goes, no, I can't. And they leave him alone. Right? They leave him alone. They walk off. They leave him alone. Then the kid whose life he saved, which we forgot to bring up, Chapel has to pump his heart.
Massage his heart. Yeah.
And he comes back to, and then he kind of bonds with him a little bit. But then the kid is going to wind up going on this mission to go murder people, and then he comes back and he's dead. And Benga goes, "That's it," and he grabs a Klingon knife and he goes to town to go back and murder. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He tells the dude, I'm a doctor now. I don't do that. Right? And then he does it.
Yes.
Because he's been pushed to it.
Because
and
he's
so
been
I
driven
can
to
understand the writing in this is that he doesn't believe people can reform. He's definitely not going to believe that what's his name reformed. So he murders him. And he's like, I'm glad he's dead. Ha ha. Dun, 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 the Federation morals. Yay, we win again. The other problem that I have with this episode is that it kind of points out, hey, unless you're in the war, you're never going to understand. So don't talk. This is a lot of people saying, I don't want to talk about it. Benga says I don't want to talk about it. Chapel says I don't want to talk about it. How can you help her? Oh, don't talk to them about it because you can't understand because you weren't there. Okay, great. So we have no evidence of any kind of counselor on board the ship. We have people walking around with untreated PTSD.
Untreated PTSD.
As far as we know, we don't know if they actually have sought help. What I do know is that Benga is still carrying around that little thing of green liquid, his super murder
his
juice.
Super soldiers, his super murder, his Gatorade.
His the little vial of Gatorade that he and
his murder Gatorade
used to kill a bunch of what? Klingons. Yes. Remember that? So they're just walking around wanting to kill Klingons. Now, there's a few things here. We've kind of covered this territory. Remember, hey, wouldn't it be great in Star Trek VI if after they murdered all the Klingons, Kirk went, well, they deserved it. Klingons.
Hey, them's the breaks.
Klingons,
Fuck them.
They're bad. They killed my son. Fuck them all. Fuck them all. I don't care. I wish he'd said that during the trial. Yeah, he's just flipping off all the Klingons.
That's right. Every goddamn last one of you. Yeah.
What happened in Star Trek Undiscovered Country? Oh, that's right. Kirk realized that he has prejudices because of what happened and that he's wrong for those prejudices.
Absolutely. And that's one of the best things about that movie.
Right. What is the quote when he's in his room?
How can history get past people like me?
Exactly. Yeah. He's self-aware and he's trying to work through something. What did we learn in this one? And Benga and Chapel have problems, apparently.
Yes.
Deep, hurtful problems. Let's hope they never encounter another Klingon again. Right? Right? Let's hope we never encounter him again.
Although that would be pretty hilarious if it turns out like once a year we get an episode where a Klingon comes on board and it always ends with him Benga killing the guy.
So here's the thing that, one of the things, this kind of falls into some of the things that I look for in Star Trek.
Yeah.
I watch Star Trek because these are people that I root for. These are people that I would hope that we can become, right? And that it is difficult, that you have to make difficult decisions. And it's not easy. How many times have we seen Kirk or Cisco or Picard or someone else, and they draw a clear line, right? People who work towards something, right? Those are the people we admire. And the ones that fall into fucking all the past shit, prejudice, racism, whatever. Now, thankfully, this seems more war trauma than anything else. It's not just that he's a Klingon, although it does kind of appear that he's a Klingon that has, a background, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, how many people have we seen during the Cardassian War, a war that we never witnessed prior to the big one with the Dominion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw people who were traumatized by it. We had Miles O'Brien who got through it okay. He still carried a few things. He has that great line with the Cardassian during Deep Space Nine. He says, or is it? No,
it's TNG.
It was TNG. He says, I don't hate you for what, he basically says, I hate what you brought out in me.
Yeah.
He doesn't hate the Cardassians. He hates what the war did to himself. That's a very self-aware statement, right? We don't have that in this. These are Starfleet officers, medical officers, for fuck's sake. And at the end of the episode, what do we have? They both lie. Mm-hmm. They both lie. They take down this guy's reputation, even though he is negotiating peace treaties left and right. They take down his reputation because he was a bad guy during the war. And it's like, okay, so he was a bad guy during the war. He probably should have served time for it. That's when you step up to the tribunal, say, I witnessed this while I was murdering everyone in sight. I was the one that murdered everybody, not him. He's been lying or whatever. If you feel that's gonna help things, but no, we got fuck the greater good. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. Murder, 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 lie. And I'm supposed to walk away from this going, okay, I guess I'm fine with that. I'm not. Here's the thing. It didn't make me think. It didn't challenge something that I held, like one of the reasons why Pale Moonlight is so great is because it challenges what most people watch Star Trek, for. It challenges them, right? No Starfleet officer would ever do what Sisko did. And although technically Sisko never did anything, he didn't kill anybody.
That's true. Garak did, but
Garak did.
Yeah.
But Garak convinced him, right?
Yeah.
He convinced him with that little speech. All it cost you, was what? One, I can't remember what the exact.
Yeah, but yeah, blah blah blah, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer.
One Starfleet officer, and Sisko has to talk himself to, and it's hard for him. You can tell that Sisko is going through some shit.
Yeah.
To do this, right? I don't get that from these guys. They lie to Pike. Are they lying to Pike because they want to keep his respect, or are they lying to him so they don't get in trouble? It could be both. Maybe they're lying to him so that they don't get in trouble. I mean, she literally witnessed our doctor stab a man who walks with a fucking cane in the medical bay with a knife that he's carrying around for some reason. If he hated murdering so much, why is he still carrying the knife around with him? His daughter's lucky she got away. This was detrimental to that character. This really could have been an episode where the two of them show that they are overcoming their stuff, right? And he could have said that. I had thought very much about killing you, but instead I'm going to tell the truth. And then he exposes him for what he is. And then Starfleet, security come up and they arrest him. And they say, well, you need to be arrested for what you did. Instead, we got this whole dude is trying to turn his life around, and yes, it's based on a lie. And why are why is it that we have a scene where the Klingon is the one that is being logical about this, or at least as closely logical as you can at the end, and someone who we're going to continue to follow through this series does something deeply wrong, and there's no resolution. Pike comes up and goes, you can tell me. And they go, no, I'd rather lie. The end. do. Next week, we're having a musical number. Did. It's like, fuck no. I just felt like I don't know what they were trying to say with this episode. If they're saying there's no redemption, that you can't get over your pain, that, some things are unforgivable, because that's kind of what they said at the end. So some things you just can't forgive. I do agree with that. I do agree with some things are impossible to forgive. However, I don't expect Starfleet to solve that with murder. And we're supposed to, and then lies about it. And we're supposed to go, okay, I can't wait to see him in the next episode. I can't wait to find out how. Now, if they're going to use this as some big thing, some big dramatic thing later on, in which he comes to realize what he did was wrong, if this haunts him, or if this haunts Chapel, great. If it leads to something else, then I will look back on this episode differently. But this episode, just on its own, after our wacky, goofy adventures in the previous episode, and apparently the musical that's going to be coming up next, boy, this just sits like a big lead turd between the two of them. It's like, okay, I guess you guys don't know what a series tone means. So I'm done. I'm going to, people are going to hate me for this review. No,
it's fine.
Look, I saw there was, like always, the visuals, the special effects. I like some of the things that the characters did. I hate what this did for Chapel and Benga. Really do. Steve, you go. You loved it. I know you did.
Yeah, I did.
I liked it a lot. Shit.
I liked it a lot more than you did, and I understand some of the problems that you have with it. I think some of your issues with it might have been lessened if they had had one of the war veteran characters be portrayed as though they had kind of worked through their issues and they were in a better place about it. Because of the three characters on the Enterprise that we see who are carrying around war trauma, it's varying degrees, but they all feel pretty much the same way about it. You know, they all still carry bitterness. They're all, you know, sort of not over the war. They mistrust the Klingon guy. And, you know, it's just it's a matter of degree. And I think it might have helped if we had had a character who was a veteran of the war who had come to a different place about it, you know, so that way your problem of, you know, well, what is is the message of the episode that you just never get over things, you know, and redemption is impossible. And, you know, like that might have been lessened if the show would have let us see someone who had worked through their pain and had sort of come out on the other side. And to show that, oh, it is possible. Like not every war veteran is, you know, like in Benga, there are people who have been able to, you know, process it and go to therapy or whatever. And now they're in a better place about it. So, I mean, I kind of see that criticism. What I really liked about it was, well, there were a couple things I liked about it. Let's not forget that when Benga kills the guy, this is the guy who ordered the massacre of the civilians. You know, it's not like, well, he wasn't the butcher of Jagal, he was innocent. No, he was even worse. He ordered the murdering of the civilians that sent Benga there to stop him in the first place. So he's actually even worse than his reputation suggests. And, you know, yes, is it morally wrong for Benga to do what he does and to stab the guy, the unarmed guy? Yeah. I mean, I can kind of see Benga's side of it. Like, yeah, he's done good work since, but he's done that good work by lying and saying, actually, I was the one who killed my own men to stop the massacre, instead of I'm the guy who told him to do the massacre in the first place. You know, so I don't really feel bad.
I'm not defending the Klingon. What I'm saying,
but I'm just saying, I'm just saying, like Benga, when Benga tells Pike at the end, basically there are some things that there are some wounds that never heal, and there are some things you can never make up for. You said, will he be haunted by, you know, what he did to Ra in future episodes? I don't know, but he certainly seems haunted by his war experiences. You know,
you mean his unresolved PTSD?
Yeah, to the
point which when he sees another Klingon, he granted it's a higher up muckety muck famous general, you know, that he falls down after seeing this guy.
Yeah, right? He has physical. Yeah. Yeah. But I liked sort of the portrayal of, oh, you know, war can really mess people up, and to the point where even a person like Benga, who has dedicated his life to being a healer, can be so damaged by it that, you know, he's capable of you know, doing something like he does at the end of the episode. My problem with the war in Discovery in season 1 was that I never believed they were actually at war. It's like, why are you doing a war season when you're not even showing the war? It just felt like a weird creative decision. It was like, we're at war. You're never going to see the war, but we're totally at war. And in this one episode of Strange New Worlds, they show you just, you know, like not even half the episode is war stuff. It's just flashbacks, but it feels more real than it ever did on Discovery. And you see enough of the war, and
for a reason.
It doesn't bother me that they lied. It doesn't bother me that, you know, they
never cut it in Starfleet.
Well, but I'm not a Starfleet officer. I'm a person watching the show. Like, it doesn't, so as a viewer of the show, it doesn't bother me that they lied. It doesn't bother me that Benga winds up in a different place than Captain Kirk does in Star Trek 6. I mean, I agree with you. It is one of my favorite parts of Star Trek 6, that they acknowledge Kirk's racism against Klingons, and then they make it an actual, like, overt part of his character arc to confront that and overcome that. I that's one of my favorite parts of that movie. But not every Star Trek show needs to give you the same message over and over again. I think it's okay for this episode to be like,
then what is, I need to ask you,
this isn't going to be, at least at this point, this isn't going to be Benga's character arc.
Then what is the message of this episode?
Even good people can be broken in a way that,
I get that,
cannot easily be repaired, and perhaps cannot be repaired, period.
Right. So fuck hope. Right, that's the Star Trek message we're sending this time, is fuck hope, you're broken, sorry. There's no redemption, there's no turning. I mean, there's two redemption arcs in this story, and Benga's and Klingon dudes. What's his name? Rausch, whatever his name.
Yeah, Rausch.
Okay. And Benga's, remember, they made it perfectly clear he's Master Murder Man, but now he's a doctor. And he's supposed to be doing good, but it turns out, nope, he's actually a murder man. And Murder Man comes and kills, and after someone's dead, he goes and he kills all those guys. Oh, and he's not done killing yet, because there's still one more guy to kill. Are we sure that Benga isn't a Klingon? Because boy, oh boy, he sure does act like one.
He sure does know how to kill people.
Now, if this is clever writing, and they're saying, oh, but he's more Klingon than anybody else, because there's one more guy left to kill. Remember that Deep Space Nine episode when they had to go kill the albino? Oh boy, they went on a murder mission for that one, for revenge or whatever. I don't know. It was revenge. I mean, granted, the albino did murder their sons. Yes. So they had a reason, right?
Well, and this guy murdered a whole bunch of people.
Oh yeah, he did. Boy,
he murdered a whole bunch of people. My big problem with the episode is really not anything that I fault the episode for. It's just, I feel like I've seen this before. Not in Star Trek, but war is hell, war breaks people, and it can't always be like, and it's not that it's a bad message, and it's delivered very well here. And like you said, the performances are fantastic. And it's well done. It feels like, okay, well, I guess this is just Star Trek doing this now, because it feels like I've seen this in other places, and it doesn't have the same impact that it would have if this kind of story had not been told in other places so often.
Sure.
I think this is an example, kind of like the first episode of this season, which we both didn't like, but you didn't like more than I didn't like it. I think we have different, like, our pre-existing expectations of what Star Trek is have different effects on our opinions of episodes, because I feel
I'm more of a hard
like
ass than you are, I think.
Yeah, you're more influenced by your pre-expectations of what should go in a Star Trek show and what the message should be, if there's a message and that kind of thing. And I'm more willing to, just kind of go along and, I mean, I have my limits too. Like, if there was a Star Trek episode that was like, actually racism is good and we should all vote Republican, like, that would be a line for me where I'd be like, oh no. But for what we saw in this episode, it wasn't like, I just took it as individuals, acting and reacting in a way that made sense based on what we've seen happen to them. And we shouldn't necessarily take them as role models, but we should sympathize with them and perhaps view them as examples of, real people in the real world who have gone through similar things and are dealing with similar issues, and extend our sympathies to them just as we would extend our sympathies to the likes of Benga and Chapel.
And I think I want Star Trek to continue to inspire people to be better. And that's a fundamental thing. I don't need this to devolve into some kind of dreary melodrama, because I can watch dreary melodrama on fucking any other show. What I want Star Trek to do is to do what it had done in the past, and that is try to set an example. Yet I don't mean cut out all drama, but I do want people in Starfleet that I can respect and admire. And right now, I'm having a really hard time respecting and admire the murders and liars that they turn to the characters into. That's my problem. I like it when people overcome stuff. I like it when Nog overcomes his fucking problems, his PTSD.
Oh, of course. That's a great episode. That's a great episode. Of
course it is. And it's very dark. And there's a lot of our characters go through some very fucking dark shit. Right, Miles? It seems like every other week you have to go through some very dark shit. But one of the reasons why I admire those characters is because they struggle through something and get to the other side. Yeah. When Miles O'Brien is about to fucking kill himself because a bunch of aliens made him think that he was in prison for 20 years and that he had murdered somebody, you don't get much darker than that. But you show that there is hope and that he can work through things and that he has friends and there are people who care about him and that you can work past that. What you don't do is go, no, you never get over your trauma. And Benga is still a murderer. He murders, and now he's dead, and now he's lying to everybody, and he's a murderer. Great. I can't just walk away from the episode going, okay, yeah, great, thanks. That's a great message. That's why I watch this, is to feel bad at the end of the episode, right? And I'm sure that other people might watch it and they're only invested in the characters and not the same things that I want to invest in when it comes to Star Trek. And that's perfectly fine. These are all my opinions. It doesn't mean that, of course, everyone else has to believe the same thing. If you love the episode, awesome. There have been dark episodes, in TNG, TOS. They've all had episodes, but they weren't necessarily dark because the main characters did something fucking unconscionable, right? Mm-hmm. It's a big difference between Kirk allowing Edith Keeler to get hit by a car and Kirk blowing her fucking brains out and then jumping through the portal and saying, let's get the hell out of here.
I think we all know Spock would have been the one to shoot her if it came down to that. Kirk wouldn't have shot her. Spock would have been like packing that phaser, going like, okay, you better let that truck hit her, dude, because this is happening one way or the other.
So anyway, I think we fundamentally disagree. We both agree that there are aspects of the show that we did like. But for me, unless this amounts to something else down the line, as a standalone episode, I really didn't like it. So that's just
fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Especially knowing what next week's episode is going to be.
I was just going to bring that up before we wrap this up. How crazy is it, knowing the two of us and our general tastes? How crazy is it that I'm looking forward to the musical episode more than you are?
I am not. Like I said before, Buffy did a musical number, but that's because Buffy is a magical world filled with magic and genies and vampires and shit like that.
So they fly past a special kind of neutron star that zaps their brains and they all start singing. I mean, the whatever the technical or non-technical explanation is for why they all start singing doesn't bother me. It's Star Trek. They can come up with whatever they want. It's Star Trek. It's like, the Romulans invented a singing ray. Like, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. But I am curious about it, because even though I am not, generally speaking, a fan of the musical genre.
No, you're not.
There are exceptions. There are musicals that I have enjoyed. And because Star Trek has never done this before, I am curious to see how it turns out. And whether it will be an episode that I do actually legitimately enjoy and watch and go, oh, wow, that was really good. Or whether it is just a deliriously entertaining train wreck where I think oh my God, I can't believe they thought they could pull this off. Either way, I am intensely curious to find out what we're in store for next week.
I'm worried about the other thing. You said either is you vacillated between the extremes. It's either going to be really good or it's going to be an entertaining train wreck. What I'm really worried about is that it's just cringy to the point which I can't watch it. I can't watch the actors do this to themselves, right? I can't watch them do this. And maybe it'll be good. I'm going to try to keep an open mind. But as I said to you before we started the show, this seems like the second gimmick show in a 10 episode season.
Because they did the cartoon crossover last week, and now they're doing the musical.
And it's like, do you not have enough ideas to fill up an entire 10 season episode without a few of them being a gimmick?
I hope. I mean, it seems like from the preview that we've seen that it's going to be like in the style of like a traditional kind of Broadway musical. I still kind of wish they had gone and done like a hip hop musical, specifically early 90s pop rap, so we could see Pike bust out an MC Hammer dance. Or Vanilla Ice, because he's got the Vanilla Ice hair. He could do like Pike could become Vanilla Ice.
Remember, you're talking to the man who couldn't watch Enterprise because he couldn't get past
of the title song
of the title song.
Which I agree was a miscalculation on the part of the producers.
Yes.
They could have picked a different song.
What I'm truly afraid of is that this next episode, there's not going to be any explanation. It's just going to be a musical.
Honestly, if it was a good musical, I'd be fine with that too, because musicals never have any fucking explanation. It's not like aliens come down and zap them with a beam at the beginning of West Side Story. Like they just start fucking doing it.
Yeah, but I mean,
and we're just supposed to accept it. Like people do that.
Because we go in knowing it's a musical. You don't take an established dramatic series and then all of a sudden it's a musical.
Or maybe you do.
Okay, maybe if you're a soap opera from the 1980s, yeah, you suddenly turn into something that you weren't last week.
Here's the thing. It's all a matter of degrees. All right. It's all a matter of degrees.
We are hitting a writer's strike. Buck knows what we're going to get in the next year.
It's a matter of degrees, right? NYPD Blue never did a musical episode. NYPD Blue was mostly like a very grounded, realistic feeling series. So they never did a musical episode, but every once in a while, a fucking ghost would show up.
What the fuck?
It was always shot in a very realistic way. And you could always kind of interpret it and say, well, Andy was hallucinating or Andy was dreaming. But the fact remains, there's a fucking ghost. And, so it did step outside of its realism every once in a while. It never stepped so far out that everybody started singing, but it did step out every once in a while. So it's not like it's completely unprecedented for a series with a particular tone for the most part to occasionally say, let's do something different. So as long as the episode itself is good, I don't mind.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're done. We're done. Can we be done?
I liked it. Jason didn't. We're done. We'll see you next week for episode 9, the musical episode.
Yay. I can't wait. I can't wait. A musical episode. Hooray.